Welcome to the 8th part of my video walkthrough for the Okami New Game Any Percent Beginner's Route. If you haven't already watched the first few parts of this video, I recommend you watch them via the playlist linked in the description. From the last part, we had just completed Oni Island, and we're going to now cover everything up to the Arc of Yamato, is my plan. So everything through the end of Wawku Shrine. Starting off, we're going to jump off the left side of the cliff here, just like before when we're headed to Orca, except this time we're going to be heading to the mermaid spring that's in this direction. If you don't have the peace bell, you'll have to go around these guys, these demon scrolls, but it's not too hard. This is the mermaid spring right about here. We're going to jump in and immediately just use your mermaid coin. No new weapons to equip this time. You did technically get a new weapon from defeating Ninetales, the Wind Glaive. I forget its exact name. Unfortunately, it's not really necessary. Fortunately, I should say. It's not necessary, so you don't have to spend time equipping it. We're not going to be manually fighting too many enemies from now on. Once you're in Shinshu Field, we're going to head on our way to Kamui. On our way here, we're going to just catwalk here. Be careful to avoid this green scroll here if you don't have Peace Bell. From here, we're going to head this way, and we're going to line ourselves up with a specific marking on the floor, which is right here over this cliff. From here, we're not actually close enough to trigger the statue, say. But if we go much farther, like around here, we're going to hit a cutscene trigger for a camera pan that pans over this observatory thing. And we want to avoid that because that camera trigger is slow. So instead we're going to use first-person camera here, wait for the lightning to strike, and bringing the camera closer with first-person camera is enough to allow you to hit the statue easily. And then from here, the camera pan trigger disappears because we already hit what it wants camera pan over. And we can just go in here. Isun will talk, just skip it. Similar to the secret tunnel in Seian, this is a interior of Kamui, so we have to dash from Shinshu, but we can actually maintain our dash all the way into Kamui. So just make sure you do a dash restore, and we'll be on our way. Once you get into Kamui, there'll be a big camera pan. From here, you can skip Isun's text. What I'd recommend you do now is save at this save mirror, because this next trick is definitely worth practicing. So you should definitely have a practice save for it, even if it's not particularly unforgiving. Instead of going towards Oki's house and fighting the Namehage and Oki, which would take some time, we're instead going to do a big camera adventure to restore the Guardian Sapling from underneath the map. Now, this camera adventure is pretty much the longest one in the game, and it's rather easy to mess up, and it's very long. So it definitely does merit practicing, but it's worth it even though it doesn't save too much time. At most you can save about a minute, if not closer to say 30 seconds with this. You're going to line yourself up with this circle on the wall here, which is, well, it's more like an oval, but this marking on the wall here, and it's going to be next to this tree here. We're going to use outer camera, and then we're going to, sorry, that interrupted me. Use outer camera, then tap the camera button to make it go to inner camera, and then immediately hit the brush button to interrupt it. This gets you the properties of inner camera without actually, with the distance of outer camera, which are both helpful. The reason we do this is because if you try to do a camera adventure with outer camera, the camera will pop back towards Amaterasu, whereas if you do a camera adventure with inner camera, it'll stay in place, which is what we want. Because we're going to be unbrushing and rebrushing a few times during this in order to break the camera's boundaries as much as possible. Another thing is we're going to be using the fast brush button here to make this a lot quicker and more easy. Part of the reason that's important is because it's rather difficult to hold all these buttons you need to do at once. At least on the Switch Pro controller, this is the fast brush button and this is the brush button. So to hold them all together, I would need to... and we're also going to be using both the C-stick and the analog stick to move the brush around while changing its perspective all at the same time. So to hold all these buttons together, I need to use a rather awkward claw grip that looks like this, looks like the OK sign, by using my index finger to hold down the fast brush button, my middle finger to hold down the brush button, and my thumb to manipulate the C-stick. You could also use inverted brush controls where you put the brush button on L, but that doesn't really help here because you still need to claw to press the C-stick and the right analog stick and the fast brush button at the same time. So just figure out whatever's most comfortable for you. This is what works for me. And once you're here, press the camera button and then immediately press the brush button to get an outward facing, or like an outer positioned inner camera mode, like I have here. But you don't need to unbrush during this. It's not necessary. From here, we're going to pan the camera towards the left here, and then we're going to pan it towards the right, and we're going to rotate it to break the bounds while rising. So we have the brush here in the top right corner, and we're trying to get over here up this mountain such that the bottom of our camera is aligned with the shadow here at the bottom of the cliff. If you don't do this quickly, the camera will snap back to Ami. I'm not sure exactly what controls that. You might want to unbrush like halfway through this to make sure it doesn't happen, but it's just whatever ends up working best for you, because there's a lot of variables in this trick. So once again, we're going to set up the camera, because by messing it up there I had to set it up again. Then we're going to unbrush there, although I seem to have messed it up, so let's set that up again. So right around here, maybe go a bit farther to the right. We're gonna unbrush facing this area here because there's no collision here. So we have the camera pointed out of bounds, which is important because that means the camera's rotational origin is going to be either out of bounds or not in front of a wall as we push it, which means we'll be able to push it through this hill here. So from there, we're going to sort of rotate the camera sideways and then push it through the hill. And like I said, there's no collision there, so we can just push it all the way through. From there, we're going to be rotating slightly towards the right, or well, I guess making the camera face more towards the left. And we're going to wait until we see these two fences here, which is in front of Oki's house. It's just that Oki's house is unloaded right now because we're too far away from it. Right about here is when you want to unbrush for the second time. I unbrushed an extra time up there, but it's not necessary. Then we're going to face more so. We're going to keep rotating this way to get the camera as low as possible and as far right as possible. From here, there's a few different ways to do this. I know Cookie, the person who discovered this trick, he prefers to move the camera rightward here by getting it under this house. I find that's too inconsistent, so what I instead do is I face the camera towards the tree, or well, towards this mound where the tree's under. Then, while holding the fast brush button, drag the camera down and sort of try to angle the camera as much as possible so that it's still moving. And we're going to try and get basically the entire mound above this that's what I'm looking for, above this edge here where the parchment ends. Then from there we want to angle the camera all the way down and then push the camera up with the brush. So we have the camera angled down and we're moving forward and up. We're blind here, but the camera is moving. It almost always does. What we're going to notice is eventually we're going to pop through the ground, and then at this point you're still out of bounds, but you've just started clipping inbounds. So we can still rotate the camera down to get it back out of bounds. And with any luck, you should be just about under the mound, depending on your positioning. So it turns out the mound's over there, so you must have gone a bit to the right, but that's fine. Just push it back farther in position once you've done the blind movement facing down. And once you're close enough to see the tree, unbrush for safety, and then just draw circles until you bloom it. So in this case, we got a sun. If it's already, like, if it's nighttime right now, we would want to draw a moon to make sure that the day-night transition doesn't interrupt us, but it was already daytime, so we should be fine. So we're going to need to get a bit closer to the sapling here, so we can actually rotate the camera around because we're really far from the origin. And then we can just bloom the tree. Now again, this trick's rather finicky. It's pretty easy to, like, if you move the camera at all while you're unbrushed, like if you're holding a button, like if you say you don't, whenever you unbrush, let's start from there. Whenever you unbrush, make sure you've let go of everything, because if you like are holding the jump button, then it's possible Ami will jump, which will reset the camera to her, because the camera will only stay like stuck if she's not moving. As soon as she starts moving, the camera will snap back to her, which will ruin the whole trick. Also, if you have the camera away, you unbrush, and then you angle the camera at all, then the camera will also snap back to Ami. And also, if you use the left analog stick, if you move at all, it'll snap back to Ami. So basically, you want to let go of everything whenever you unbrush, and then you want to rebrush, and then you can start moving things around again. If you mess that up, and it's quite easy to do that if you're not careful, then you'll have to do the whole trick over again, and for that reason, you may want to not go for this trick at all. If you choose not to go for this trick, and I don't recommend you choose not to, because this trick isn't that hard once you get used to it, but the alternative to doing this is to go straight towards Oki's house. You'll hit a fight trigger for some Namehage, just use one of your XLs, go into Aoki's house, skip some cutscenes, and then during the Oki fight, just use 2 XLs on each phase, and that'll kill him. And then you can go to here, you can light Yoichi's arrow with lightning, and it'll blow up the mountain, and you can bloom it. But again, that's a bit slower, and it's not strictly necessary. This trick isn't that hard. Once you bloom the sapling, either way, now we have to skip another fight. There's a big fight trigger here, like this big, for an Igloo turtle. And an Igloo turtle is a rather annoying enemy to fight because we don't have good tools to fight it with. It has a bunch of health, before you can even actually damage it, and then damaging it is pretty slow because it has a lot of actual health. So instead we're going to skip around it by using a flower that's going to be over here. You can't see it right now. Oh, you can see it now. So this flower here, we need to load it, and then we need to vine to it around the trigger for the Igloo turtle, which starts around here. So instead we're going to do a bit of a weird movement in order to get the that bud to activate, so that we can trigger it, so that we can bind to it from here. If you see now, oh, actually I have activated it accidentally. I don't know how I did that, but I guess that worked. Basically, you need to activate it. I'm going to show you the normal way we activate it. I don't know exactly what I did. That might actually be interesting to test, but the normal way to activate it is once you spawn here after blooming the tree, we're going to run backwards, build up gold dash, and then we're going to run straight at this rock at around just left of sort of this corner here. If you look at the floor, there's sort of two, this is like obtuse angle, like right here, and we're going to run towards it, just towards the left. We're going to jump, double jump, and then air tackle the invisible wall that's surrounding this rock, trying to gain as much height as possible without going too far left, or you'll hit the Igloo turtle skip, or the Igloo turtle cutscene. So like right about like that is perfect. Then you'd want to restore dash, go towards here, and then air tackle. You don't need to do a wall jump, you just need to get as much height as possible here, because we need height in order to do this. Now once you have this activated, you need to vine to it, and then it's not going to be able to pull you through because there's an invisible wall surrounding the sapling. So instead, while holding like left while you're actually being vined to move slightly farther left around the invisible wall, once the vine gives up and retracts, we're going to vine again, and we're going to repeat this process until we get through. And ideally this will take about 3 vines, but it might take like 4 or more. Now at this point you'll notice I can't vine the flower because the invisible wall is in the way, so we need to angle the camera a bit. And it might be that like you can just barely hit the flower, like it might only be the very corner of the left corner of the flower that recognizes. Usually you can alleviate that by angling the camera more this way, but sometimes it'll be stuck in a position where there's only a tiny spot that you can bind to. This is particularly annoying when you have motion controls, because it's very hard to hold the brush steady to make sure that you're on the right spot. If you have normal controls, you can just get the brush in the right spot and it should snap into place if you're careful. Then just vine again, and at this point you should be fine. Yep, so we managed to vine all the way here. If you run out of ink during this, I would use an ink upgrade, because you don't want to fall into the Igloo Turtle skip. It's just not worth it. From here we want to jump down, and ideally we should still have dash. We're going to talk to this merchant here. There's a few places you could do this shopping trip, but this is just about the easiest time to do it. Just buy a bunch of XLs. We're going to need at least 5. Actually, at least 7, I should say, for this next dungeon. But it's okay, or it's unlikely that you'll still have 7 left after Ninetales, unless you were really conservative, which you don't need to be. So it's easier to just buy extra XLs here, rather than skipping this shopping trip. Once we're here in Wep'keer, there's a few ways you can tackle Wep'keer. Well, there's 2 main ways. You can either do it the intended way, which is to talk to a bunch of villagers and get them to open the gate for you, or you can save about a minute or so by just doing this very complicated out-of-bounds clip that I'm going to show you. This trick is pretty cool, but it's also quite easy to mess up. It doesn't save that much time, but I would still recommend doing it because it's not that bad. I personally like inner camera for this trick, but a lot of people prefer outer camera. Either way, we're going to get over here to this pen that's by the chief's house. We're going to completely ignore Samical, and we're going to dash towards this corner. You have to have gold dash for this. We're going to jump over the fence, double jump around the hill, and we're going to land on this piece of geometry here. And then we're going to climb up the mountain and then go all the way around the chief's house out of bounds in order to get behind the gate without opening it. So the timing there is pretty precise, and you'll slip off the mountain immediately. It's very easy if you don't time your air tackle correctly. Like if you don't have enough height for the air tackle, then you won't get a green landing on this piece of geometry. You'll just completely slip off. And you can also bounce if you're not careful. Really, you just have to have a feel for the right timings of the double jump and the air tackle in order to get this right. Once you've landed, or once you're about to land, I would recommend mashing jump, just so you can get a grip, basically. Then once you see that a jump hit, like a jump connected with the surface here, and you didn't fully slip off, double jump and get farther onto this platform, and then just repeat that until you're about here on the surface. Then you can start doing ground tackles in order to actually gain distance and height up the mountain. Basically, every time you land here, you can't see yourself because you're under the mountain, but you can feel it in your controller's vibrations if you have those enabled. And you can also hear Ami's footsteps connect when she lands. Each time you land, similar to Oni Island, we're going to do it as basically at the instant we land, we're going to ground tackle instead of just jumping. And we're going to do jump, double jump, ground tackle, jump, double jump, ground tackle, jump, double jump, and hopefully the camera doesn't mess with you here. We're going to try and get up to about this position on the mountain when Ami starts popping through the ground again. You don't want to go too far forward because the ground ends about here, and you'll fall off and you'll have to do the trick over again. So instead we want to get over this invisible wall here that divides the mountain in half, which you can only do from the top. Then we're going to go right, we're going to slip off the mountain, ground tackle, and then jump onto this mountain. And then we're just going to basically do more ground tackle double jump to get across it behind the gate. You can do it from lower down, you don't have to go straight across, but I think this way is a bit faster. Yep, I avoided out. That's never happened before. Oh well, that means I went too far right, I guess. Basically, as soon as you get behind the house and behind the gate, you can start clipping back into bounds. But I went a bit too far because I was busy talking. So let's just void out and I'll show you the trick again. Most likely we'll land here. This is the last inbounds place we were in. Somehow the game recognizes whether you're inbounds or not. But it doesn't actually use that for anything except respawning. So once again, with gold dash, we're going to do this jump here. Once you're on the mountain, by the way, I prefer to switch to outer camera just for stability. Face the camera somewhat down, and then, again, tackle, jump, jump, up the mountain. Hugging this middle wall here until you can jump over it. Then hold right, slip down the mountain, tackle, jump, jump, tackle, jump, jump, tackle, jump, jump, tackle, tackle, jump, jump. And at this point we're behind the gate, we just need to clip inbounds. There's a few different places you can do this from. There's a few different places we can clip back into bounds from, but really you need to be basically around this tree here, which is like I think it's the third tree or the second tree or something. Yeah, it's the second tree. From around here, there's not many good spots that I can find. So we want to clip into bounds, maybe here or right of here. Yeah, so there I managed to clip back in bounds. And at this point, we can just run towards the portal here. So you can see the gate's still closed, and we can go to Ezofuji. Or Ezofuji, I should say. It doesn't matter whether it's day or night at this point, because there's no more scrolls. We're not going to see any of them from now on, I'm pretty sure. We're going to know the Arc of Yamato. In New Game Plus, you could actually just jump up into the portal here to go do the arc, but we can't gain that much height. So we're just going to go around. Walking or dashing up the hill here takes about a minute, so if you want to drink some water, you can, as long as you're willing to do this with one hand. From here, immediately after, or just about immediately after doing Wep'keer Gate Skip, we have yet another big skip, and this one's actually a lot bigger, because it doesn't just skip a tiny bit of NPC talking. This trick here is Wawku Early. Normally you'd be intended to go do a side quest where you talk to the person here, whose name I forgot. And then you'd go back to Kamui, you'd go to Yoshpet, and then Pongton and Kamiki 100 Years in the Past, and that takes about like half an hour. It's really slow. But instead we can just clip directly into Wawku Shrine. And that trick is rather complicated and unforgiving, so I'm going to explain it here. We're going to jump up top this house. We're going to land on the ground. Make sure you're on the ground here, because that's important. And we're going to vine to this flower. Now here's the thing. We don't actually want to go to this flower, because if we get to this flower, we're screwed. There's no way to get back up to here without just running all the way around the lake again. So instead, we're going to cut the vine and use it to gain some height. So the thing is, I mentioned this a long time ago, way back in Moon Cave, but if you cut a vine, it doesn't actually take away your ground jump, even though you're in the air, as long as you were grounded before the vine connected. So we're going to use that to make it lift us a bit, like so. Then we're going to cut the vine. Make sure you angle it well. It's very easy if you like angle it this way, or like this way, it won't cut. You have to draw it around here, and it has to be angled against the vine. Now the easiest, most reliable way to do this is to angle the camera more away from the flower, so that you're cutting straight across the vine, rather than keeping it angled towards the flower where you have to cut like against, or like along the vine. Because if you cut along the vine, it won't work. You have to cut across the vine, and that restricts the angles you're able to use to cut it, which means it can become inconsistent. So what I do is, I'm pretty conservative because I've messed up this trick very badly. So I angle the camera pretty far forward in order to make sure it works. If you fail to cut it, you can try again, and then it's possible to then do your ground jump in the air, and then get back onto this platform and try again. But you won't be able to do the trick successfully, so it still wastes time. If you fail at cutting the vine twice, then you'll be dragged to the flower, and you'll have to jump off the flower, jump down onto the ice, and then go all the way around, which costs about a minute or two. So you don't want that to happen. That's by far the worst way to fail a trick in the run, pretty much. Other than the couple soft locks that there exist. Anyway, from here we're going to cut the vine, wait a fraction of a second until the vine fully cuts, then jump and double jump for maximum height. Then we're going to vine again to gain a bit more height, and we actually still have our air tackle because we never used it. we're going to cut the vine again, and then we're going to immediately mash air tackle over the invisible wall here. So all of that together gives you just enough height to make it over the invisible wall. Now, one thing I didn't mention here is that we actually must have 5 full ink pots before we start the trick. The reason for that is you can't air tackle if you run out of ink. So even though you only use 4 ink pots in that sequence, 2 for vines and then 2 for cutting the vines, you need to have 1 left over so that you're not inkless, which means you wouldn't be able to do the last air tackle, which is necessary to get over the invisible wall, which is very high. At this point, we're out of bounds, and there's actually no risk of clipping back in bounds. In Okami, all invisible walls, pretty much, are two-sided, which means even if you're on the out-of-bounds side of them, they're still going to push you away and prevent you from going back through them. So in this case, we got over the invisible wall, so we can't get back through the invisible wall. But fortunately, the invisible wall actually ends about here, and we can actually just walk straight into the loading zone for Wawku, even though the gate is closed. Because the portal extends a bit out of bounds. So you're just going to want to walk in. As long as you hold against the inner wall of the gate, you won't clip in bounds, like I said, and you won't fall out of bounds. It is possible to fall off the ledge there, off of the out of bounds geometry, and then just void out, which takes about 15 seconds, but you'll respawn back in bounds, or back out of bounds on the geometry you fell off of, because the out of bounds geometry here is normal ground, which means it registers as a respawn point. Do not go back out of Wawku, because it'll respawn you outside of the gate back in bounds, which means you'll have to do the whole clip again. Once you're in Wawku Shrine, you have now saved half an hour of unnecessary gameplay. So we're going to go to the right here, to this banister, and we're going to try and jump onto it. And then that'll hit this trigger here. Isun's going to talk once it stops panning, and then these cannons are going to immediately start firing. Now, it's possible to land on the banister here, even though the trigger's like right in front of the banisters. I don't know exactly how this works, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I think you have to like go over here and then jump on the right side of this banister, but it's sort of precise. Either way, you'll land somewhere either on the banister or just behind the banister, and then just restore dash onto the banister. We don't want to get hit by these cannons, just because it wastes time. At the end of the banister, we're going to jump towards the cannons and around them. We don't need to worry about them, and we're going to jump here into this camera pan. So normally, at this point, the intended thing for you to do would be to go that way and get a key to unlock this lockjaw, but we can actually skip that entirely. So we're going to just jump here, double jump, and then air tackle to get a bounce. And we're going to try and angle it so that we can reach the camera over the invisible wall here with Inferno. And we're going to melt this ice, which will teleport us past the lockjaw. And now we're past the lockjaw. So it's really that easy. Like, this trick is not hard at all. And that skips like a minute of the bottom level of Wawku Shrine. From here, just do a tackle jump and then air tackle, and then water spout to get onto this pillar. From here, we can actually skip some platforming by doing a air tackle or a ground tackle jump, and then get over to here rather than going over here and around here, which would waste time. Then you want to angle the camera up and then catwalk. If you still have your dash, which you can conserve dash through all of that, then this next segment's a bit easier. If not, then you can do the same thing, it'll just be more tough. You'll hit this camera pan here after you get up with catwalk. This is the last required use of catwalk, by the way. We have no other way to get up to here, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, that's what catwalk's for. With gold dash, these jumps are pretty easy, because you have more air time. Or you go farther in the air, basically. We're just going to jump around. If you don't have gold dash, you might have to air tackle there to make it, because you don't want to fall down here, because you might fall back down to the first floor. If you fall back... I should mention this now, by the way. If you fall back to the first floor, like over there, you can't do that key skip that we did twice, because you already melted the ice, which means the cutscene warp is gone. So you'll have to go do the first floor puzzle to get the key. I'm not going to explain how to do that puzzle. It's pretty intuitive. There's a scale, and there's some trees, and you have to toss them on the scale and then bloom them while melting the ice. It's a bit of a sequence, and it takes a bunch of time. And we're just going to avoid doing that. If you mess up the trick, I would just practice it along with practicing Wawku Early. There's a mirror right outside of Wawku Shrine where you can save and practice both tricks. Once you're here, there's another mirror here if you want to practice this next trick. I would actually recommend saving here after getting Blizzard, just because because there's no point in practicing everything between now and Blizzard. Anyway, just run through this door, jump, double jump, and then just Veil of Mist. It's possible, by the way, that you'll just randomly fall through this gear after Veil of Mist. I don't know why that happens, just hope it doesn't. From here, if you have the Peace Bell, then you won't need to worry about this blue scroll. If you don't have the Peace Bell, either go around the right side of this patch of ice, where that's outside of its aggro range, or wall jump off of this wall to get past it, where it won't aggro you because you're in the air. Then we're going to run here. As we approach this first spider, we're going to jump into Isin's text. These hot spiders. We're going to jump past them, and we're just going to jump down here, which will hit a fight trigger with Great Tengu. Now, Great Tengu are pretty great because we can defeat them very easily. Just press start and mash A to use your XL. Do a dash restore, and then just like wait here. From here, wait until the barrier dissipates, and then melt this lever. You don't want to go any farther because you'll hit a camera pan for like alerting you to the nature of this device, which is unnecessary. Also, next we need to align these gears in order to get Blizzard. There's a puzzle where it explains exactly what positions you need to do, but basically you need this one to have its eye facing up, the middle should have its eye facing right, and the last one should have its eye facing left. Normally you're supposed to use Veil of Mist to slow the gears down so you can react, but we can actually just freeze them in place with the brush and then react to whether they're in position or not. And it's pretty forgiving. This probably won't work, but this should. If you run out of ink here, I would use an ink upgrade, by the way. Once you've set all three, just wait for the trigger, skip, and then we have a constellation here. Now, it doesn't look like it, but we can actually hit this middle star just from the center point. So just put a star there, and then either do these two first or these two first. I think these two might be a bit faster. And then just get all 5 stars in. Then we can skip Isin as well, and we have to have this spider at least somewhat down the ledge in order to wall bounce up onto it. So if it ends up on screen at the end of that cutscene, you're kind of screwed. And you'll just have to wait for it to come down a bit. In this case, it was off screen, so we had to wait a bit, but not too long. If it's any bit lower than the top of the ledge, you can just freeze it right away. And here we can clip onto it because it's particularly high. But you wouldn't need to clip onto it if it were any lower. From here, at this point is when I would recommend making the save for this next trick, because this is probably one of, if not the hardest tricks in the run. I would put this on the same tier as, say, on Bridge Skip in terms of difficulty. If you want to save, you'll have to go through this door. There'll be a fight trigger on the other side, and then the mirror will be to the left over there. With the fight trigger will just be another poltergeist fight, so you can just end it with an XL. We don't need all of the XLs that we have at this point. They're just basically safety for in case we mess anything up. So don't worry too hard about wasting them. You should be fine, especially if you just want to practice this trick. Anyway, at this point we're going to skip basically the rest of the dungeon by doing a jump from on top of the gate, on top of this doorway here. We're going to jump over an invisible wall. We're going to green hop across this surface here and onto this area here, which is the cannon room, and it's basically the end of the dungeon. So let me just reposture myself, and then so to get up here onto the doorway, we actually need to get into this like seam here in order to get a grounded landing. Now this part can be finicky, but you just need to get a ground jump off of that and then jump up to here. Once you're up here, it's pretty easy to stay where you need to be. from here, once you're on here, immediately turn around and then tackle to run towards the edge here, and just as you get to the edge, we're going to do another ground tackle so that we slip off, similar to the ground tackle we do off of the tree during Seion Bridge Skip. And then we're going to do another jump, either a double jump or wall jump, it doesn't matter which, with maximum height. So we're going for height here, and we need to get over a barrier that's around here, in line with the edge of the platform. Then we're going to drift right to land on the ledge there. So let me see if I can demonstrate that. Yep, I got it. So at this point, we're going to be landing here. Now, the way this surface works is kind of confusing. Basically, I judge by where the snow texture ends and where the rock texture starts. That's about where you can land to green hop. If you align yourself correctly, you should get the first green hop pretty easily just by timing it. But the second green hop can be pretty unforgiving. And it's pretty possible you'll slip off and void out, in which case you'll need to start the trick over again. To make the second green hop more consistent, I just mash jump, and then I deal with having a short jump there by doing an extra green hop over here, where I similarly mash jump. If you want to go for timing it, then you can avoid a green hop, which will save you a bit of time, but it also makes the trick, I'd say, a bit less consistent, unless you're quite practiced in that method. So, and then once you've green hopped about to the edge here, where the angle changes, we're going to then do a ground tackle in this direction, and we're going to get around the invisible wall that's here. So like up until, say, around this tree, around this platform, there's an invisible wall, but we can land just around here, on the very edge of this platform, behind the invisible wall, and then use that to get around the invisible wall, which again ends around here. So all of that's very confusing, but I hope you can understand it if I demonstrate it. So mash jump again. Now we do a ground tackle, and then air tackle to get onto this position here, and then we're around the invisible wall. So like the invisible wall is here, right? But it ends around here, where we can jump back onto the surface. It's like here I can't jump off, but here I can. Once you're here, and that trick might take you many tries, it's not too bad once you get used to it, but it is quite tough. Once you're here, this is the cannon room. We need to get over there and power slash to, like, use power slash to reflect 2 shots back at this gold cannon in order to open up the barrier that's behind the gold cannon so that we can progress. Unfortunately, you can only reflect shots from the gold cannon when you have Veil of Mist active, and it's only really viable to it'll only start firing at you once you're like partially across this big gorge here. And the only way you can stay on this gorge, I never mentioned this, but basically Blizzard lets you set platforms in this like humid air here that's marked by the snowflakes. So you could stand on the ice platforms and then just reflect the shots from midway across. But not only would that be slow because the shots would take longer to hit you, it would also be risky because you can very easily get hit off of the ice platforms since they're slippery, and they also disappear after a short time, and you'd have to start from back here again. It's actually a lot easier to just fly across the gorge as fast as possible and then reflect the 2 shots, rather than doing it on your way there, which is slow. If you want to make this easier on yourself, if you try to cross right now, then all of the cannons will fire on you, and the red cannons in particular, they fire 3 shots at once, which can be very hard to avoid if you don't do everything that I'm about to describe perfectly. You can activate these cannons. The 2 on either end will rotate, and you need to time when you use Inferno on them, but the 2 in the center will always hit. You can destroy all 4 red cannons, and then only focus on the gold cannon, which will make the segment a lot easier. But I don't think that's necessary because this method works pretty consistently regardless. What you're going to want to do is get Gold Dash, and then jump as far as you can across the gorge in one go. And then just as you're about to land, or would fall past where the ice platforms spawn, make a set of ice platforms straight down, and then hold up to continue dashing across them. And then do a jump off of the end of the ice platforms just as you're reaching the other side, in order to make it over here Make sure you fall a bit low to avoid the shots that are targeted at you. And then do an air tackle to get over here. From here, we still have Gold Dash. What you're going to want to do is Veil of Mist. And then as soon as you see a shot from the gold cannon come out, like you can see it now, you can reflect it. The hitbox for reflecting these gold shots is actually a bit lower than the shot themselves. So you'll have to slash around here. Then you'll have to do it again. So I like tapping left, sort of like what we do to avoid Light's projectiles in the first Orochi fight. I like to tap left to avoid getting hit by the projectiles from the red cannons, but you can see they fire a lot of them, so you might get hit regardless. Anyway, once you've done that, once you've gotten a second projectile out, just power slash it again, and everything should freeze. Then we're going to want to immediately start moving. Don't even tackle, just get moving. And then once you hit this trigger, you're safe, because the cannons disappeared during the fight. This is another great Tengu fight, which means as soon as it actually appears, like once it spawns, we can hit it with the Excel for some easy winnings. Then you want to just build dash and go through the barrier. From here, the easiest way to do this room is to freeze the gears with a special ability that you might not know about if you haven't seen a speedrun before. Basically, with Blizzard comes a secret second ability that the game doesn't tell you about, called, I think it's technically called Snowstorm, but most people just call it Snowflake. Basically, if you draw a snowflake pattern, you can spontaneously freeze things without a source of ice. The game intends for you to release a ball of ice and then push it over here with Galestorm, but that's really slow. So we don't want to do that. Instead, we're just going to use Snowstorm. Most likely, you'll start running out of ink right about now, so I recommend using an Infinity Stone right now if you haven't already used it in order to get across the cannon room, which you might have to do. So, like, if you run out of ink while you're getting across the cannon room, use the Infinity Stone and then just carry its effect into here. We're going to then use Blizzard to spread the ice around the room. We just need to get to this gear, and then we can tackle jump off of it, and then draw a bomb here to unlock the key. Then you're going to want to turn around with R3, and to prevent the ice from going away, forcing you to do another snowstorm, just spread the ice around so that you have more sources of ice, even while the gears are shaking it off. Then if you want to be a bit more comfortable, you can make sure this gear is completely frozen. You only need to make sure this gear is frozen. You don't actually need any of the other gears at this point. Then just do a tackle jump off of its very edge, and then air tackle onto here. And you should make it every time. Oh, I should mention, you should see now that we have Solar Flare, which is a source of fire, although that's not too important. You get Solar Flare automatically after getting Blizzard. It's supposed to be for getting all 13, like all main 13 brush powers, but we skipped Lily Pad, and you can actually skip basically every other brush power and still get Solar Flare. So it's really just about getting Blizzard. There's an alternative method for doing this room where instead of freezing any of the gears, you literally just jump around by doing well-timed jumps to get over to this island and then to here. Then you can do a perfect gold dash jump to get over here, and then you do a perfect gold dash jump back. But all of that is rather difficult and annoying, although it does save a couple seconds. Once you're through here, just go through here. If you don't have full health at this point, you may want to go hit the mirror, because this is going to be the most convenient health refill for the rest of the game. So now might be the time, but we still have enough praise to do some health refills later, so it's not strictly necessary. Let me just take off my jacket really quick. Anyway, at this point, all you need to do is talk to Oki. Now, you might notice we actually haven't seen Oki before, so we're meeting Oki for the first time. So just mash confirm and hold fast text, basically, while mashing skip. Once we're up here, there's going to be a cutscene. Just skip it, and then immediately as the fight starts, just press start and then use 5 XLs. This fight is by far the easiest fight in the game. It's literally just menuing. Because the XLs hurt both of the demons at once, both of the owls, you just need 5 of them. It's really quite absurd. how easy that fight is. Then we want to say no, and then we're just going to no to the save prompt. Then we're just going to skip another cutscene. And at this point, this is the end of the game. So welcome to the Arc of Yamato. I think we'll get into the Arc of Yamato, and then I'll cut things off. Right about here, we're going to want to jump into cutscene trigger, where Isun tests our resolve by asking us if we're sure enough. And then at the very end, you can just run straight into this trigger here. And then we can say goodbye to Isun, because we no longer have him with us. So finally he's out of our hair, he can no longer annoy us. And this is the Arc of Yamato, so in the next part I'm going to explain how to do all of the boss rush, and how to do the final boss. If you have any questions about what we've covered in this video, feel free to ask in the comments, on my Twitter, or in the Okami Speedrunning Discord, all linked in the description. Don't be afraid to consult the text version of this guide, which is also linked in the description. And to see the rest of this video walkthrough, check out the playlist, also linked in the description. Ciao.